Evolution has left its imprint on mankind in history, up to the current modern world. Nature's diversity and creation of the earth and life is a complex mystery. As science and technology surged forward, reshaping the landscape of human existence, profound changes unfolded. While productive innovations revolutionized our world, the darker side of human nature unleashed a torrent of weapons of mass destruction, casting a shadow over progress and prosperity. Every individual encounters conflicts on a daily basis. Conflicts within and outside the inner and outer circles can diminish peace and harmony. However, when these conflicts escalate, they potentially lead to the destruction of human civilization, which is a war. Despite exhaustive research and analysis across various fields, the causes of war remain a complex and persistent puzzle. Countless experts have delved into its origins, yet the cycle of conflict continues, defying easy solutions or definitive answers. Research has meticulously categorized the root causes of war into distinct categories, each bearing its own weight in the annals of human history. These include the pursuit of territorial gain, the quest for economic prosperity, the fervor of religious conviction, the embrace of nationalism, the specter of vengeance, and the tumult of civil strife. The calamity of the First World War exacted a staggering toll, with approximately 9.5 million military personnel losing their lives and 21 million suffering wounds that would forever mark their bodies and souls. Tragically, the conflict also claimed the lives of 7 million innocent civilians, underscoring the indiscriminate brutality of modern warfare. The brutality of war left a trail of devastation, displacing millions from their homes and reducing once stable economies and infrastructures to rubble. The tragic saga of conflict should have served as a sobering lesson, a clarion call for the end of wars. Yet barely 2 decades later, the world found itself engulfed in another cataclysmic struggle, highlighting the enduring cycle of human folly and suffering. The Second World War, ignited on September 1st, 1939, raged on for 6 long years, finally drawing to a close on September 2nd, 1945, with the devastating nuclear attack on Nagasaki. This unprecedented event marked the first instance in human history where the destructive power of nuclear weapons was unleashed upon human lives, forever altering the course of warfare and global dynamics. The harrowing lessons of the First World War went unheeded, as the world plunged into the abyss of the Second World War. The toll of this catastrophic conflict was staggering, with over 24 million military personnel and over 45 million civilians losing their lives. The devastating reach of war extended its grasp over more than 50 countries, leaving a trail of destruction and despair in its wake. The ongoing conflicts in regions like Ukraine and the Middle East continue to claim lives on a daily basis, inflicting profound devastation not only locally, but also globally, triggering economic crises and exacerbating food shortages. While wars may be declared for opaque reasons, their consequences reverberate across the world, leaving unimaginable impacts on humanity. The question arises, who instigates war? And is there not a solution that prioritizes mutual consensus and empathy for the human race? In an interview with Ms. Katerina Minakova, a Ukraine citizen who is a teacher, PhD holder, archaeologist, civilian and military volunteer, She is a victim of war who has heard the very first wailing of a siren and witnessed the disaster of this unwanted war.
My name is Katerina Minakova, and I'm from Dnipro, which is the central Ukraine. If you look at the map, it is the very center of Ukraine, and this is a big industrial city, which before the war was a center of the banking and the center of the industry, like heavy industry. We have metal, we have rocket space engineering, and we actually built the rockets that went to the open space. We had the Sea-Start joint project with America, and it was a very dynamic and very well-developed city, one of the biggest in Ukraine. It's been 8 years before 2022, and the war has started for me at that moment, eight years ago. And there was also always the feeling that they would invade Dnipro because it's a very big city, it's a very heavy industry there. So Russians wanted to invade in 2014, and during these 8 years I was thinking that they can invade any moment. Before the invasion, basically they started to have these military exercises on the border. It was Russia and Belarus joint exercises together, then only Russian exercises together. But also there was a hope that it's not going to happen. And if you know Russians, and I don't think I know them well because they still shock me, but I speak perfect Russian, and I was reading also their news, and all their politicians, they were saying, no, the war is not going to happen, for example. And you have this dual feeling that on the one hand, all they're saying that they're just exercising, there's a chance like they're not going to invade. And then actually everybody is saying that they are going to invade, especially in the West, like Americans were saying it all the time, and NATO members, they were saying it all the time. So there was a feeling that something is happening. My way of thinking was if they're going to invade in February, they're going to invade in this date, like, actually on 23rd. And then there was 23rd, and I was thinking, like, if they don't invade on 23rd, they will wait till May, because the 9th of May they celebrate the victory. They call it Victory Day, not Commemoration Day of the Second World War. So we are now celebrating it on May 8, and they're celebrating it at May 9. And I was thinking it's either now or we will have time till May. So everybody was waiting that they're going to do something. So I was just staying up very late, and I was reading a book, and I was very anxious. And then I decided to finish the book, so I wasn't able to fall asleep till 2 a.m. on the 24th. And then on the 24th at 5 a.m. they started to bomb us, and the war has started basically. So it was pretty intense. This half of the year was pretty intense. You're just trying to be okay, you're trying to talk to your friends, but you know that something is going to happen, like a threat is coming.
A lot of Ukrainians didn't believe that the war could directly endanger their lives. The wars they had read about in books, seen in movies, and learned about in military museums had been misleading. The civilian population was unprepared for this unexpected war and was directly targeted in Russian attacks. When the full-scale war started, Dnipro became an immediate threat to Katerina and others, as it was just 200 kilometers from the front line of Donetsk. The fear crept into the minds of the shaken society when invaders bombarded residential buildings, civilians, and intruded into their homes and raped women and children.
Russians also bombed the electricity stations, and because they bombed the infrastructure, we have blackouts, and it means that you might not have the electricity for the whole day, and you're deprived from sleeping. The economic situation is going down, then you don't have electricity or heating, so you're cold, and you don't know when it's going to end, and this stress is just accumulates and accumulates and accumulates.
When danger arrived at Katerina's door, she and others had three options: freeze, fight, or flee. Many chose to stay and defend their land, while some women and children had to leave the country for safety reasons. UNHCR statistics show that from a population of more than 39 million, about 8 million Ukrainians had been internally displaced, and more than 6.5 million had fled the country as of December 2023, creating Europe's largest refugee crisis since World War II. Besides being a refuge from the war and the undiminished hope and optimism for a better future, Katerina has always been helping victims of war in her homeland as a volunteer.
We don't provide meat or any kind of canned meat here because it's more expensive, and again the idea is to help those who are in extreme need. I myself was there as a volunteer, also helping other people, helping soldiers, so it's not the only option to flee. Some people decided to stay because it's their houses, and people say no, you need just to go away and you need to run away, but it's still your house and it's still your home place. I needed some break. I was not okay mentally in the situation. I was very stressed.
Katerina was in a stressful situation and knew she needed a break. The ongoing crisis was taking a toll on her mental health, and she was afraid she might harm herself if she stayed. Despite deciding to leave the country temporarily, her love for her country and her dedication to helping the community remained unwavering.
And the first countries that were accepting refugees, they of course were neighboring countries, and Poland took the most number of refugees, but also other countries like Romania, they took a lot. Then there were a smaller number of people going to other neighboring countries. And for example, if you think about Slovakia or you think about Hungary, they also accepted refugees, despite now they're pretty hostile to us and they're more supporting Russia if you look at this bigger picture. And also there were people who fled to Belarus and to Russia because that was the way where they can escape. It's not because they are pro-Russian or they support Russia in this war, but for them it was easier to cross the border that direction. It's very heartbreaking to hear about the stories of survivors. For example, there were like 5 people in the car and only 1 person survived, and this person experienced being near people relatives and friends who died like this way. So it was a pretty terrible experience of what's happening when you need to flee in such a situation.
It was cold and many people faced difficulties in feeding their children because they were out of money. In this situation, some people were lucky to have host families and friends in neighboring countries, she said.
Somebody was less lucky and they just lived at the train station in Poland, in Warsaw, for example. There was like a lot of Ukrainians just sleeping on the floor and for days and days because they didn't know what to do and how to handle the situation. And again, there were NGOs that started to help, but there were so many people that were trying to evacuate that it was just terrible.
She had a strong desire to fight for the nation by joining the front line, but she couldn't enlist due to a lack of skills and physical fitness. Various thoughts crossed her mind about how she could contribute to her country until she decided to volunteer to help people.
Of course, my hope is that
She hopes that Ukraine will one day regain its occupied borders and wishes to return to her homeland filled with memories.
To go back to these places because they're very dear for me. I've been in Crimea multiple times and it's a very nice place. I studied in Lugansk. I have very good memories about it. So I hope that I will be able to go back to these places even for a short time to visit them.
The forced situation for Ukraine to defend its soil has not only angered its people but also shaken the hearts of many nations around the world. Besides the support of weapons and ammunition by the USA and member countries of NATO, bold volunteers of different nationalities could make sacrifices to stand on the front line.
2 days after the war started for us in 2022, I forged my birth certificate, wrote to the Ukrainian embassy and said, I'm 35 years old, I'm physically fit, I'm combat ready, firearms trained, and I wish to join the Ukrainian army and fight the Russians. When I woke up the next morning, I thought to myself, well actually I'm 68 years old, I've got a false knee, ischemic heart disease, I'm not combat trained, and I'm not really ready to fight the Russians. But I was so angry. I was just so angry at the injustice.
My name is David Lewis. I'm a director of the Ethical Support Alliance in the United Kingdom. We are a limited company by guarantee working for peace, justice, democracy, truth in Ukraine. I think it stems from a sense of anger at the invasion of February 2022, disbelief that in the 21st century, one country could invade a neighbor and feel that it had nothing to stop it, just stealing land, stealing people's lives. But once the initial anger was over, I felt there was a sense of heroism around the people of Ukraine. We saw photographs and film of an elderly lady, remonstrating with a fully armed Russian soldier. We felt we needed to support Ukraine because they are a sovereign state. They're a democracy with all their issues that they have, and they do have some. But they've been invaded by an illegal occupation, and we felt we had to support Ukraine in its struggle to restore its own sovereignty. And
the history of war is unpleasant to hear about, and no one dreams of a future filled with war. However, the current escalation of conflict is disturbing and brings disharmony, making our world unsafe for coexistence.
By inclination and instinct, I would place myself as a pacifist. I would say that war is inherently unjust. It doesn't really matter who fires the first shot. By the time the first day of a war is over, brutality, inhumanity, extreme violence, death, destruction is inevitable. And for me, this war in particular was a challenge. There are wars all over, and we've been challenged several times about why we are not supporting Yemenis in Yemen, why are we not supporting displaced Palestinians, why are we not supporting the victims of war or survivors of war in the Sudan, in Somalia. And the only answer we can really make to that is we can only fight one sense of injustice, and the injustice we chose was Ukraine. And we did that because we feel a direct threat from Russia. If Ukraine is overrun, other countries will follow, and we will be directly threatened. So there was a direct threat.
War isn't a solution for peace. A proper negotiation amongst the elite society could have resolved it by bringing peace to their table. Could it be the weakness of the leaders in decision-making, or is it the social crisis that promotes conflict?
The leader's position is so critical. If only we could have all the world's leaders subscribe to a pacifist manifesto, then there wouldn't be war, possibly. But I'm afraid, well, my gut feeling after a lifetime is that war is probably inevitable. It's part of the human condition. From earliest times, there is some form of inherent issue within us that makes us fight. We fight for what we believe in. Sometimes we fight because we like to fight as human beings. All sorts of reasons why people go to war, not just for injustice. We should not listen to leaders' rhetoric. We should make judgments based on fact and reality. But of course, Russia has dominated the propaganda war. It's won the propaganda war, without any doubt. And it's bemused its own people, most of whom support Putin, or say they do. Whether they do in their hearts is another matter. So the leader's position is critical, for good or ill.
The United Nations Security Council holds the primary responsibility for maintaining international peace and security. Have they failed to call upon the parties to settle the dispute?
Well, the problem with the United Nations Security Council, of course, is that it has Russia involved, which is one of the protagonists in the war. So really, the United Nations, for all the good they do, and they do a lot of good, has been exposed as a toothless warrior, because how can you have sanctions and impositions and arguments against a country who at times has the presidency of the United Nations Security Council? It's ludicrous situation. They should have been thrown out. They should have been banned. They should not be taking any part in the world stage. You know, the United Nations Security Council is all we've got, and so we have to work with it. And they do good work around the world. But the Security Council really is powerless to stop Putin.
The world has become a factory of ammunition. With countries spending trillions on defense budgets, it is a clear sign of an unsafe world where different countries prepare for an unseen enemy. Modern weapons cause unimaginable destruction to human lives and settlements. Can we ever declare a winner in this contemporary warfare?
We're all losers in war, necessary or unnecessary. However a war is, the money that is being expended on munitions, each cruise missile that Russia fires costs, I think it's £850,000 sterling, probably $1 million. Just think what good that $1 million could do, you know, for the hungry of Africa. And they're firing thousands of them, you know, or hundreds anyway, but probably thousands by now with the ones that are coming in from, you know, North Korea. And you think, what is the point of all this? All the buildings and all the villages and all the towns that are being totally destroyed and have to be rebuilt, the hospitals, you know, all the infrastructure, the power. You know, there was a sense that the world was a safer place for a while. And now it's a very unsafe place. You know, we're just inches away from the Third World War, I think.
The war is ruthless and shows no mercy to the human race. Daily news reports missile strikes on residential buildings, hospitals and schools, revealing the tragic reality that war disregards the international humanitarian law.
War is total war these days, and all sides in a war will resort to basic live or die tactics. Russia has adopted it as a policy to destroy morale, whereas I think Ukrainian breaches will be individual. They will not be institutionalized. They'll not be policy for sure, but they will happen because people get frustrated, they get angry, they get bitter, they want revenge. But Russia, it's an indoctrinated policy to be brutal, to dehumanize the population. That's part of their tactic, is to demoralize, dehumanize, and to destroy. And they won't be in the slightest bit interested in humanitarian law.
This world is too small for wars, considering many nations have nuclear weapons. Despite various modern inventions, there is still no effective intervention to prevent wars.
So my message to the world leaders would be, let's all sit round and see if we can find a way where some form of global order can be created, and a good global order, because there's too much extremism, too much nationalism. We are small communities. We all live in small communities. We don't really need this big picture. Big picture is destructive.